they recommend as well. I'd like that to be added to the scope of their list in terms of these school board members that get mentioned as referral references.
Oh, okay.
I want the references checked for, I want them to check their references for potential conflicts of interest.
Okay, so we're gonna check their references in the sense of calling them and talking to them about the people, but we're also gonna look at the names.
I'd ask them, when we give them that list of here are the potential folks, that they actually vet their own references for themselves, so that they're not submitting a reference who has a conflict of interest with those same set of folks.
But we haven't developed a set of,
No, I know, I'm just going down my notes on the process of would we let them know that in advance? I mean, like, what's the next? Okay, so we have interview, we're talking about process, we've identified bringing them in, now we're setting next steps for the process. So I'm just making the suggestion that when we create the scope of having them look at, here's the list of who should be running for potential conflict of interest, that anybody we're gonna utilize as they're providing as a reference, we should be vetted for conflict of interest as well, because these are people who are telling us, yeah, they've done a great job, I want them to know they don't have a conflict, they don't have a connection to the people that are being contested. Does that make sense?
I mean, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, and I don't know if that would create conflict of interest or not, I don't know.
So I think it's a logistical issue for
Yeah.
them, which is, so typically what happens is you have a database that's electronically maintained, and whenever you have a client, you put in the names of the clients and all of those connections. So if you asked, if you were the reference, we would put in Ms. Cuevas, and you would pop up as a client of our firm, for example, or on the school board of a client who we represent, but that wouldn't link it to, is there a connection between you and somebody else, some third party? It's just the connection between, it's whatever data you put in between the two different pieces that you put in.
No, I see your point. I guess to let it, I'm just wondering, there's each of them have provided, one has provided 3 references, one has provided 4. What's the connection of those references, if any, conflict of interest to the same list that we've asked them to check their own conflict of interest for? And you're telling me that's difficult to ascertain.
It's kind of an apples and oranges comparison.
But I think we do need to check with the references to find out how these attorneys perform.
I think it's information that we wanna have. What
The
would
only
you say?
reason I ask is some of them are elected officials that are referenced, and they get county contributions.
Well, they did reference 2 of the board members, the Roberts firm.
So, I mean, is that the kind of stuff we would look at, as opposed to, we would ask that attorney, well,
I think it is really the attorney's conflict of interest of
got it, of.
But I hadn't thought about the recommendations. Gosh, I think we could debate that all night.
Yeah, I know. I might be overthinking it.
So I can go over some of the things that I've captured during our discussion previously. Well, first of all, we would need to inform the attorneys of the interview on the 20th. And we could check, staff could check references of the attorneys prior to that time. Proposals could be available online. We said we talked about that timing. They could go out at the same time in the agenda if the subcommittee so chooses, or at a different time.
What proposals do you mean?
The proposals, the attorney proposals.
Okay.
Okay, that's for the public. And then we talked also about a conflict of interest list. All leading up to, okay, would be interviews, which would be held on the 20th. And then on the 21st, there would be a recommendation from the subcommittee on the attorney selection. So it's really the 20th and the 21st.
I think my biggest question right now is questions, because going through this, I realize that we have a little bit of work to do in formulating the questions for the interview, and I'm thinking
So if, Madam Chair, if I can suggest, do we have a problem, okay, let's look at the work, let's break it down. If we look at the way it was described by Ms. LeBlanc, we have an interview to get through, we have a training proposal to make public, we have a conflict of interest list, interviews, and then the rec. So for the, can we look at next steps in relation to, one, can we agree that those are in fact 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ways of saying, that's the work we gotta get done? We're comfortable with that? The way Ms. LeBlanc just described it? Yes. And then, can we then look at each one of those and figure out what work within each one of those needs to be developed?
Yeah, why don't we start with the proposals?
Okay, so in terms of getting those on the web or determining when we would release those? Yes.
72 hours in advance. It's a good idea. Yeah. Now, do we want to put them on the web, or do we want to give them to people who ask for them? What do you think about the pluses and the misses from a legal standpoint?
We're supposed to make them available and with the agenda, basically the same way that they gave them made available to the committee. There's I'll just tell you right now, there's an unsettled question under the Brown Act. When you have a subcommittee that does not have its own website, you don't have to make that available on the subcommittee's website, but often it's done that way anyway, so that people are getting it, to the district. So it's really, I can't tell you there's a Brown Act have to on this one. I think it's open to see how you want to do it.
Well, I say we just do it.
Just put it with the
Make it
packet.
available with the agenda packet so that everybody who will see it and is interested in coming to the meeting, they can have that information.
So, and then we would do that on Friday? Okay.
And so they would be available on Friday, and also keep in mind that the board on Tuesday, the 21st, that would also provide an opportunity for the board to see them as a whole, but we also could provide them with handouts of the board.
So, do we need to do a vote on that?
You may, just to keep things neat, want to keep the list going and make one motion that has those component parts in it, as opposed to voting piece by piece.
Okay,
Just my
Is that-
suggestion,
is that
that one
okay?
action.
okay. I think it's easier to consider them individually, but certainly doing one motion makes sense. All right, what's the second one?
This conflict of interest list, how would we develop that?
The challenge is how far you go. If family members and that type of thing might be challenging to be able to know who all those people are. I can understand former trustees, I can understand staff members, about a certain point, but I don't know how we identify any family members or relatives of trustees. We let someone else put on the list. I don't know
What about if they, SGI? I mean, would that be on the list?
if it could be.
So can we develop a process where each of us submit who we think should be on the list and come up with a final list? Is it possible for us to do our own homework, and then when would we finalize? Could we finalize that list?
Well, personally, I don't think I could do a very good job. I think there's members of the public who could probably do a better job. Not because I'm not a smart person who can do things, but I feel like other people might
And how do we
be
implement
more
that? Because
equipped to do that.
the companies have to be notified.
Uh-huh.
They have to be given an opportunity to do whatever research they need, be preparing themselves for the interview on Monday.
Yeah. Do you feel like you could come up with a list?
Well, I have a gut sense, based on everybody I've been reading about, and including the document, who's been discussed, who's been alleged, but what the dynamics are